Welcome back to my channel, Candace with a K here, where I normally talk books, beauty, and kicks. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Today, we are talking books. I'm doing my 2020 book recap, and I think you might want to hear what I have to say. Make sure you have your pen and paper ready because these are some book recommendations that you might want to take with you throughout 2021. So let's get into it. For 2020, I had the goal of reading 30 books. But fortunately, I was able to exceed that goal by 5, and I ended up reading 35 books. So if you want to follow my Goodreads reading challenge, my Goodreads reading challenge is linked down below. So add me on Goodreads so that we can keep up with each other. Okay, but I was able to read 35 books in 2020, which came up to 10,826 pages. 10,826 pages of just fiction, nonfiction, young adult, romance, urban novel. It was just a plethora of things. So here are some of the things that I read all through 2020. Some of my favorite authors, new authors, debut novels, follow-up novels. So it was a lot going on across the spectrum of reading. One thing that I intentionally did in my reading journey last year was to read Black authors. So there are very few authors in my list that are other meaning not Black. So that is just something to keep in mind as you listen to the books that I've read. I have to start off with some of the books that I really enjoyed, not necessarily saying that they're the best, but there's some books that I really enjoyed. The first is Such a Fun Age. This was like a buzz book at the beginning of the year, and I think it was rightfully so. I think it showed the insidiousness of racism and how it can be just so tangible and right there, that you sometimes are blind and naive to it. And I just liked the easygoingness of the author's writing without it being like slap your face and overt, because racism, as we know, can be overt, but it is also very subtle. And so I loved the nuance in the language that was used that didn't make racism seem like such a slap your face act, because it could be both sides of the coin. So I really appreciate that. And then I also really related to the book because I am a Black woman that works with white people and white kids often. So I could feel and understand the main character's feelings around, being in that position. So loved that one. Another young adult book that I really, really enjoyed this year was I'm Not Dying With You Tonight. And that sounds like such a crazy title to a book, but it is so good. So once again, we're revisiting these issues of racism where, white people are really naive to racism. And I'm sad to say, and I guess it is kind of unfortunate that it took literally 2020 for people to kind of open their eyes and see how insidious racism is. Mind-boggling for us. But I'm Not Dying With You Tonight was such a great story in showing how if you're not exposed to it, you really do not know. And what I liked was that this book was co-authored between two people, but it also showed the double-side narratives of two people. So I think it's just well written. Story is delivered in such a great way, and the story itself is amazing. So I'm Not Dying With You Tonight was definitely one of my favorites, but not the best, but one of my favorites this year. Before I get into my best books, I have to share some of the books that really left me underwhelmed in 2020 that I kind of just expected more from. And not that they were bad per se, they just didn't do anything for me. So that could be different from you. I'm always going to advise you to read them on your own and develop your own opinion. But for me, they just didn't do it. And one of those was The Vanishing Half. Now, I don't think The Vanishing Half was a bad book at all, but I also don't think it was a great book. And I think I had greater expectations for the story than what was presented. That is not to say that you should not read it, because I'm also going to recommend that you read it because it is going to be turned into a series. And I think the transition from book to series, if done correctly, will be impeccable. I think this show is going to adapt to television so well if written and produced and shot is impeccable. Like, it has to be impeccable. And I think it will be, because it's going to HBO. And if HBO can do one thing, they can make a series. So I am going to tell you, yes, read it. Also, it's a Black woman, read it. The Vanishing Half just left me not feeling what I should have felt. It just fell flat towards the end. Like, I think it was going, and then it kind of just fizzled. And I'm not going to tell you much more else because I want you to read it. But I think if it is transitioned to TV well, that is probably going to be one of the best series that we see on TV. And if it's casted well, then we should see some like Golden Globe, Emmy noms, and all that as well. So I think it'll be good. Another story that I was really underwhelmed by was the follow-up to Children of Blood and Bone, which was Children of Virtue and Vengeance. And I absolutely loved Children of Blood and Bone. And the follow-up for me just didn't do it. I think this might have been the filler episode if we're going to relate it to TV. I think it was really just to push the story forward, but not give you enough to really leave you satisfied. And I think in the next book, which I believe this is a trilogy, so it should be the last, might be the gut punch. So that is what I'm hoping for my girl. But it just didn't do it for me. And I think it was just the filler episode. Another book that just left me kind of like, all right, was Grown by Tiffany Jackson. Now, Tiffany Jackson's pen is crazy. Like, she knows how to write a story. She knows how to keep you on the edge of your seat. She knows how to keep you entertained. And if you've read any of her previous work, like Allegedly or Monday is Not Coming is crazy. Allegedly is crazy. Even Let Me Check the Rhyme, I believe, is also Tiffany Jackson. Pretty good. But Grown, for me, did not do it. And I only say that because the story was very similar to the allegations that were presented in the media against R. Kelly. And Tiffany makes it very clear. The story is not about R. Kelly. The story is about just the priming and the priming that, young girls go through when they're trying to get fame and blah, blah, blah. But as the reader, the only thing I could think about was R. Kelly. And so it was just a weird tension to have to navigate between this fictional character with this real character, with what I know in the media, from what I'm reading, so it just wasn't what I expected or wanted from Grown, especially because I love the cover. So the cover of the book features a girl with her bamboo earrings, okay? And that's my whole steez. She's got her, her fade. And, the cover is just so immaculate that I just expected for the story to be slightly different. Mind you, I was going based off the cover solely. It was Tiffany Jackson and I knew I was going to read it. I didn't even read the blurb. I knew nothing of the story prior to actually sitting down and reading it. I just knew it was Tiffany Jackson because I know her pen is crazy. I'm going to read her work. But the similarities in what was happening with R. Kelly and what was happening with the main character in her book just was really off-putting for me. Not to say that the story is not a good story, but it just left me underwhelmed because I felt like I already went through that circus with R. Kelly. To have to then re-engage in those similar conversations. In that particular context, they were just too similar. There should have been a little greater differentiation. And how that was to be achieved, I don't know, but they were just too similar. Nonetheless, it's always a story that needs to be told because pedophilia, specifically towards Black girls, constantly gets swept under the rug. So I do appreciate the story and for pushing or continuing to push the conversation, but as far as what I expected of it, just didn't do it for me. Okay, I have to say that my new favorite author after reading 2 of her books in 2020 is Talia Hibbert. Okay, she has brought us Get a Life, Chloe Brown, as well as Take a Hint, Danny Brown. And we are about to get the third sister story sometime in 2021. She is by far my new fave rom-com author. Jasmine Guillory is up there with her, but Talia Hibbert makes stories that I for sure see myself in. While I was reading Take a Hint, Danny Brown, I just knew I was Danny Brown. Like, I recognized myself in that character so much to a T that I just thoroughly enjoyed reading that story. And I'm so glad that Talia Hibbert is making a name for herself, doing what she's doing, because I love it. The body inclusivity, the range in emotions, the range in topics. You go, girl. My forever favorite author, because I probably read the most from this author in 2020, was Ashley Antoinette. If you do not know Ashley Antoinette, she is probably urban novel royalty, okay? She knows how to churn books like butter, okay? She is able to just get books out and in rapid speed and pace. Her and her husband initially had a series together called The Cartel, which is one of my favorite urban novel series ever. And probably not even urban novel, favorite series ever. But of course, they're in the urban fiction market. But The Cartel is just mess. And anybody that knows me knows I live for a mess. Okay, so that series is just so good that, I love it. I revisit it every few years. And so I'm in the process of revisiting that series again because I really like it. But Ashley herself has established herself as a solo writer aside from her husband. She has the Ethics series. She now has the Butterfly series. She's had series before. Pretty much all of her characters feed into one another. We could almost consider it like an Ashley Antoinette universe, sort of like the MCU, but it's awesome. And I read probably about 6 or 7 of her books in 2020. That's my girl. What's up, Ashley? Before we get into my best books, I have to talk about this underrated book of 2020. So I read Black Girl Unlimited by Echo Brown. I do believe that this is a young adult book. Not certain, but I think it is. And the thing about this book is that it's kind of gut punching, y'all. Like, it really talks about how Black girls' magic is often stifled because we're dealing with so much trauma and pain, but it is written in a way that so eloquently illustrates that for us, that we constantly have this cloud constantly watching over us that is tormenting us when we go through these traumatic experiences that just live off of us, stealing our magic. And I think I can't even put into words how awesome this book is, but the way that it is written is so illustrative of just Black girl trauma, Black girl pain, and having to live and survive off of it. And she did that. So shout out to Echo Brown. All right, so my best book that I read in 2020, which I don't think is a 2020 release, is Homegoing by Ya Gassi. Homegoing is literally one of the best books that I've ever read in my entire life. I had this book for months and I sat on it for months, and I kind of just looked at it and I kept going and I looked at it and I'm like, oh, I should read that. I should pick it up. I should read it. And one day in quarantine, okay, when the quarantine activities start to, diminish, I picked it up and I never put it down. Like, seriously. The book it's mind-blowing, to say the least, but it really illustrates how things are passed through generation to generation, be it trauma, be it trinkets, be it tokens, be it happiness, be it joy, like, be it anything. It is passed through our generation from our ancestors down to what we are today. And I think the book is great. Specifically, because that was her debut novel. If you coming out the gate swinging like that, I can't even imagine what your mind is capable of if you come out swinging like that. It's crazy. It's literally crazy. I'm currently reading Transcendent Kingdom, which is her follow-up, and it doesn't have me as invested, but I'm not finished. So when I'm finished, I'll give you all the tea. My also favorite book of 2020, which I think is also not a 2020 release, is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This is by far one of the best books I've read. Also, I think it just was so well written, it being a historical piece, going from past to present and back, and just the thought that it had behind it, like, don't marry for love. That's not the base of it, but like, that's the message I got. Don't marry for love. But like, you know, back in the 50s, having to hide who you truly love because of career, because of appearance, and how we are actually fortunate enough to live in a society now somewhat where you don't have to hide those parts of yourselves in order to be successful. So I think that was one of the best books I've read. I hope that they also turned that one into a movie, because I think it will transition well from book to film. And she was probably only one of the few white authors that I read this year, and she's got some more work coming this year that I'm interested in. So I'm gonna keep an eye out for her as well. Now, it wouldn't be a year of reading without reading a book that you absolutely hated. And for me, that book was Luster by Raven Leilani. I hated this book. I absolutely hated this book. I only finished it because of the type of personality I have. If I start it, I got to see it through. But the book was terrible, in my opinion. And I'm still left questioning, what was the motive? What was the purpose? What was the intent? What was the message? I think after having a year of reading impeccable work that centered Black women in positive light, and it just left me speechless to know that we will put this Black woman in this position to look like a fool in this book. I could not stand the main character, and I don't know if that was the purpose. I don't know if that was the, you know, the author's intent. I think the main character was super condescending, and I know that that could have been a play on her sarcasm or not. I think the situation in which that main character was put into, where she was essentially in a throuple, if we keep it frank, she was like somebody's unicorn in their marriage, then like, what is happening? That's what I just kept saying as I'm reading, like, what is happening? The fact that they had these white people had a Black adopted daughter, and that friendship that they were trying to create between the main character and this Black adopted daughter, because they shared the commonality of being Black. It was just it was weird. And I think it was the worst book that I read last year, and I have no intentions of revisiting it. I'm still waiting to hear a fair rebuttal to what made this book so good. It was like on all the hype lists, people were going bananas over it. It is her debut novel, but it just didn't do it for me. So maybe y'all could tell me something I don't know. If you don't already, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. Also, I have a Bookstagram page, Candace with a K Reads. You can find me on Instagram. You can also follow my personal Instagram. Find me on Goodreads. I add almost everybody back because I like to see what other people are reading. So if you're on Goodreads, add me on Goodreads. Let me know what your favorite book of 2020 was in the comments below. I'm curious. because maybe it's something that I need to pick up and put on my 2021 list. Holla at me. If you're all done here, I'll see you in my next video. Peace.